Well, hello, and I just think that's so wonderful that you were composing. My father was a composer, so I grew up with him on and on and on and on and on for hours. So,
That's good. Well, I'm relieved because I felt terror. I suddenly looked round and then I saw your email to Beth. I was, oh my goodness, what an idiot.
oh
But yes,
no,
I'm glad you understand the energy was flowing, so it was a good moment.
oh well, I'm sorry I pulled you out of it then.
No, it's good. It's good. It's all good. I've got it captured on here, so I'm
Okay. Oh, good. Yeah. Well, I just, yeah, it's just, your music is so wonderful, Will. Um, I can't tell you, it's not just me. Every rehearsal, my singers are saying, "Oh, these words are so beautiful," and oh my gosh, and so you really move people, not just here and there, but every rehearsal. And somebody stops and goes, "Oh, well, we did this online, but now we're doing it live. This is amazing," or well, the text is so beautiful, and then they start crying, and then the same person 2 weeks later, yeah, this is so beautiful. It's still making me cry. So you just need to know that.
Well, do you know that's a really lovely thing to hear because, well, with your dad being a composer, um, when you're writing music, it's quite lonely, and you're just there. It's just you. You're hoping that what you're making will resonate with people, but you don't actually know that until um, until people do have the music and the songs, and they're singing them, and it's so rewarding when you hear, just as you've said, that the music and the words are being meaningful. Because I mean, I'm only speaking for myself, but I mean that's why I set words to music, is to make them have impact, to make them have more emotion, hopefully, than the original words, so that the effect of the words and the music is a very powerful thing.
Hmm. Well, you're certainly doing that. And I know as I've studied your music and I study the text, I study I mean, I know you have choices and commissions that you do, and I see which commissions you've done and the little descriptions. That's what I have to go on, plus
Right.
the main body of the music. And I just can honestly say I'm so impressed with your sensitivity to text and what you do with the melody, harmony, rhythm, the meaning, the phrases. I know you're probably just sitting there working all the time, trying to get it, but then
I
you don't get to see that impact of what you're doing in say my rehearsal.
No, that's true, and that's very, very nice. That warms me. That really does. That's lovely, lovely to hear.
Hmm. And there was there's one YouTube that I saw, and um, you were you just had one word, and you were saying the word out loud, and I could just hear all the little, oh, harmony, rhythm, texture, mood. I could just hear all of that just igniting in your imagination. And I was just really impressed because I like to understand who the composer is, what they're trying to say,
Yeah.
and where we go from that. And that's an actual skill for you, which I'd never seen that in someone else.
Well, I suppose. I mean, I've always loved text and poetry and written word and spoken word and conversation and prayer and liturgy. All the many, many ways that we hear language. Um, I mean, for example, I love watching films in foreign languages with subtitles because I love the sound of the language being spoken. Language always has this amazing effect on us. you know.
Mhm.
And I suppose from when I started writing music, I was always thinking a bit like a songwriter, in that I'm always, that words and music are always happening sort of at the same time. And if I'm writing my own texts, what seems to happen is that I will perhaps have an idea or a mood or a thing that I'm trying to express. But the way I will begin is to sit at the piano and to start to think about harmonies and words at the same time. So what I tend to get is fragments of text, perhaps a little phrase of text on a piece of music. So they literally occur at the same time. Um, so that all those pieces that have my own words definitely have they've come into being at the same time, the words and the music. Now, when I'm setting other poetry, like your beautiful poetry that I worked on for the commission, there what happens is that when I see the text and I start reading it, it starts to sort of resonate, you know, as poetry does, and I sort of start to feel like the music can reach with the words towards certain things and certain phrases, particular words. So when I'm working with a text that's by somebody else, I have to find the contours that I feel the music is going to support. And it's quite instinctive. Again, I sit at the piano and I'll have that text in front of me, and I will play chords and I'll kind of sing things. And eventually something emerges, you know, like a musical phrase on a word or a phrase, and I'll start to. That's the beginning. Once I have that little way in, if you like, then I can start to construct the whole thing. What I do find is that sometimes I have to be very patient, because sometimes I keep on having musical ideas, but they're just not quite right for the words. Like they'd be okay, but I just that I don't sort of they don't make me feel like something magical has happened. So I'm always waiting for this moment when the words and the music suddenly become magical together. In fact, the reason why I was so late for our meeting today was because there's a commission that I'm working on, and I've actually, and these are sort of my own words, but they're based on a specific biblical text that I was given. But I've been asked to base my text on that. And I've kind of done about 4 versions of this piece so far, and they're kind of good, but they weren't right. And then suddenly this afternoon, I suddenly got what I think is going to be the actual thing. And that's why I got lost in the music, because I was just, you know, writing it down and it was flowing quite well. And I got this sense of it's for Liverpool Cathedral Choir, actually, and it's in memory of a young chorister, very sadly, who died last year with a brain tumor, age 13, and it's kind of been boiling up this piece inside me, and finally, I think I have, you know, the piece. But so when you ask, you know, how do I do that, and what is the gift? I sort of feel that part of the gift is patience, of waiting until something happens that feels magical. you know, if you're a composer like myself, in a way, you could always set something, and it would probably sound kind of okay and hopefully reasonably good, because, you know, with my you know, because I've written so much music, I should be able to, you know, quite quickly write something that sounds okay. But I never just want it to be okay. I want it to be special for myself. And then if it feels special for myself, then I feel like it might be special for other people, you know. That
Well,
was a
I think I totally agree with what you're saying, and you are the pieces that I've selected. It was very hard for me to pare down a program, but I did. But I had to do those pieces or die. There's just no, this has to be done. I can't do anything else until this has got to be done. And then I thought I had the program was all ready, and then I heard the remembrance piece. No, we're doing rearranging the whole thing. But that you know, because I remember my father telling me that he says you can always tell it's going to be a really good piece by the first two or three notes. You know, and then I've remembered that, and so there are pieces that, you know, I've many pieces that I've done that, you know, at first they're kind of boring, and then after a while, then I get really into it. Yours, no, it's like, and then I'll probably just start crying and crying and crying. It's just so beautiful, and then I go, this is it. This is how I'm gonna. So that's how I pick my music. So that's really. So I think I've sensed that your notes and your words and your harmony, it's got to be inspired or something special to you that reaches people. So I can confirm.
good.
So, and then I wanted to, is there any piece that you particularly resonate, or you just like the piece that you're working on, or?
Well, again, and I'm sure you know this from other composers and from your father as well. The problem when you write things is that you feel very critical of them. And I sometimes liken it to, you know, if you go into someone's house and they've just decorated a room, and you'll say, gosh, it looks lovely, you know, it's a new color and it looks really nice, and, you know, it's a new room and it feels wonderful. But they're probably worrying about a tiny bit by the skirting board that you haven't even noticed, where they didn't quite get the paint join right between. So when you make something, you seem to be worrying about these ridiculous details which no one else will ever notice. So I sometimes suffer from that as a composer. But when I can avoid thinking about that, and when I just actually listen to the music and let it come to me, there are some pieces that are very special to me. There's a piece on that album of the Lux et Veritas album with Tenebrae called No More Sorrow, which is a very important piece to me, because I wrote it actually after our daughter had been ill for a long time. And she'd had chemotherapy, and she'd been ill, you know, for about 4 years of illness and stress of that, and supporting her. And I never felt at any point during that time like writing a piece about my feelings, because everything we were doing was, you know, you're sort of actively doing stuff like going to hospital and all these kind of things. And then she got well again, and shortly after that I came to the piano and I wrote that song almost in a single playthrough. I mean, it wasn't even, it's like I almost sang the song in one take. And I didn't realize until after I'd done that, I suddenly thought, I think this piece is about all the strain that we've been under and worrying about Rowan and, you know, this the stress of that. And so and when I hear that piece, there's a kind of thing about it that I just feel like it's just perfect. It just says the thing somehow, you know, just right. So that's a very, very special piece for me, that one. The other work that I love is actually Mass in Blue, and I'm doing it. It's 20 years old this year, and we've got a concert on Sunday at the Cadogan Hall in London, which I'm playing in. And that's a fascinating piece because I've performed it so many times, and you would think that maybe I would get sick of doing it, or it would feel like, oh my goodness, I've done this so many times. And yet every single time we play that piece, somehow, because it's a jazz piece, maybe it just feels slightly different, and the energy of the singers, because that's a big thing, isn't it? You know, as a choir director, the energy of your singers is the thing that you're kind of dealing in. And, you know, when we sing Mass in Blue, it doesn't really matter whether the choir is, you know, a less good choir or a really good choir. Somehow the energy of singing comes alive in that piece and they want to sing. So I always come out of that thinking, wow, you know, isn't singing great? And because singing is great, isn't it? It's just a wonderful thing. It's wonderful when you're 5 years old. It's wonderful when you're 85 years old, you know, and there's so many different types of singing you can do and so many different levels of singing you can do. You know, singing is just a wonderful thing. So Mass in Blue, it kind of, I feel quite joyous when we do that, you know.
Well, it's a celebration.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, yes.
Yeah. Well, gosh. Well, and thank you so much for setting my poem to your beautiful. What you did with that was every time I do it, it's different. I see something more beautiful in it. It's been a fascinating piece.
Tell me, how's it going? What was it like? Sort of, you know, because I loved the poem, and I loved all the poems that were possibilities, but that one just, I felt like it really would take music really well. Somehow I just, you know, but it's like I said, you know, you just sort of, it's quite instinctive. I looked at it and thought, oh, that's the one, you know, that.
Yeah.
But what was it like, sort of getting that onto the choir when you took it to them for the first time?
It is. Every single time I bring it to the choir, it's different, and so that first beginning part where there's, I guess you put 3 measures in 4/4, and then there's a little bit of that crescendo, decrescendo in the second piece. But then that 1/5/4 measure with that extra beat, it's incredible. It's like when people, if they're relaxed enough, and then they get that 5th beat, which is just a little bit longer, and you all the way through the pieces, it's just as you described earlier, you're building towards something, and those longer held notes, they're all different. And it's just like an angel. You can't put it in a box. You can't put healing and life in a box. You can't put it in a meter, and it moves along. And so these longer notes remind you of that. And then the sopranos just lift off, and then but they don't quite go too far, and then they go far a little bit. But it leaves you kind of hanging because there's all this other stuff that's going to happen. at the end of the piece, all that you can hear this, and then you get that there's something going on between that fermata and
Right.
then that
Yeah.
downbeat. There's something so beautiful in that cutoff to that moment. And I know if I keep just relaxing, I can receive it more. And then there in that second section, how you keep going, this gentle kind of rocking between the twos and the threes. And
Right.
then sometimes, a couple of times, you kind of let it get into the three, but not for too long. And then it straddles the line again. And then you have these held notes that are moving on and moving on. And then it returns. It returns to that theme, and that the kind of the lower voice is just being this it's almost like a whole nother piece below it. And with the little details and the little bass line kind of
Right.
coming in quietly, and then you unfold it. You just when I have, yeah, I think it's going to be amazing. You just going to just rip.
That's so wonderful. You know, that thing about the measures being different lengths, it's very much kind of that's evolved for me over the years. Remember the first piece that really that seems to happen quite naturally was in that carol, My Lord Has Come.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because in that piece, it moves between 3/4 and a 4/4 feel, and I remember writing that and thinking, gosh, that's strange because it doesn't sort of, because it's moving between these meters, and actually, but then from then on, I felt like, yeah, that's just the natural thing. Sometimes you want to hang on, and sometimes you want to push forward. And actually, when I'm writing pieces, and it was the case with yours as well, is that one of the things that I do at the final thing, I feel like I've got the whole thing, but then I start singing it through with the score in front of me, and I keep on. I'll find like, oh, actually, I thought that was a 4 measure, but actually it's a 3. We need to move on there,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll cut that measure back. Or like the 5/4, this is the one where we're going to get that. This one needs to pull out here, and I think it's about as well that as performers and singers, we like beat one. Beat one has a lot of meaning because we move into beat one. So
Mm-hmm.
if you have sort of different divisions, then those ones come either more frequently or less frequently, and that ebb and flow is the strength, I think, of using that method.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you get more of a downbeat because of the bar that's preceded it. It's interesting as well, isn't it? Because although we now sing 16th century polyphonic music, we tend to sing it in regular beat, like a 4/4, for example.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That music was never written in those meters. It was written, and many of the phrases sort of work way outside. I mean, of course, we use the 4/4 to help us hold the music together, but when you're singing, say, a bird 4-part mass really well, everyone's forgotten where these bar lines are. They're just singing phrases, and they're kind of interlocking, and there's a sort of set of rhythms going on. And I remember when I was younger, singing those people, singing 16th century polyphony, Tallis, Burge, Vittoria, and thinking, oh, this music, it's so lyrical, it's so tender and beautiful, and the lines really move towards spaces. So I sometimes wonder if that interest when I was a singer, when I was first singing church music and I sung some of those pieces, that style that I have now, with the changing meters, is a sort
Mm-hmm.
of reference to that, or that's where it began.
Oh, I thought it was so meaningful what you did with my simple text, and I sent you those several poems, and then I didn't realize that you selected that, and I thought, oh no, why did I send that poem? I mean, I did the same thing. I thought, oh, I bet he won't. He doesn't really get. I'm not really saying anything in there, and I'm just. And I realized you totally got it. You totally got it. My life's work is in that poem
It's
about.
a it's a beautiful poem. It's lovely, and its simplicity is a strength, and and which is not and it's a particularly a strength when you're adding music, because some poetry. I've for example, I've a couple of times I've been asked to set Shakespearean sonnets, and I really struggle because they're very brilliantly and beautifully crafted, but it's almost like they have so much shape already
Mm-hmm.
with the rhythm and the form
Mm-hmm.
and the way the rhymes work in different ways across the 8 and the 6. It's almost like you don't need any music on this. This is beautiful poetry, and it has its own rhythm, and it sort of does that. Whereas in a poem like yours, it's got, of course, it has rhythm, but it's also got space, and it feels like there's space that then music can inhabit and sit with. So I think different poems for me and different styles of poetry. Some lend themselves better than others to my type of music,
Mm-hmm.
and it's because there's a certain freedom and there's a space, and there's questions being asked in the poem that aren't totally obvious, and the music can help us supply that or strengthen that.
Well, that is just so perfect what you just said. I can't wait to take this back to my choir, because I've been so we've all been so fascinated by your texts and what you do. You've done, I've selected an opera piece and musical and the Celtic Blessing, the choral pieces. I have a jazz piece. I picked one of that French art song.
Oh, wonderful! Le Pont Mirabeau.
Oh, it's gorgeous. And
Yes.
and then I flew high in my dreams. So there's all these different. You've taken these texts. Some of them are yours. Some of them are, and what you've done with them is just amazing. And we're just every week we're just amazed at what you've done. And so now you've just given us this whole background to be more inspired
Good,
and
good,
understand. It really is amazing. So thank you. Thank you
good.
so much.
Well, can I give my absolute best wishes, of course, to you and to all your singers and performers.
I will.
Um,
I will. And we're going to show
for a
this for
wonderful
our
concert.
I'm going to show this video during the concert before your pieces start.
Brilliant.
And
Okay.
and
Have I answered the questions that you needed?
yes, yes, you have more than more than I wished for.
Excellent. Well, listen, it was so lovely working on the text. I hope it goes really, really well, and I look forward to hearing it.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for everything.
I'm sorry I was 2 hours late.
Oh, I love it. I love it. You are doing what you're meant to do, and
See you
succeeding
again.
and enjoying it. So that's fabulous. I'm glad I got to be a part of that.
Lovely to see you. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.